Hello, everyone, and welcome to Breakout 2, Finding and Contracting with Veteran-Owned Suppliers and Vendors. It's my great pleasure to introduce Julia Arnold from Hewlett Packard Enterprise. So take it away, Julia.
Hi, everyone. You're enjoying the event today and having a great time and learning a lot. We've got some esteemed panelists here today. Briefly, we only have about 40 minutes, so I'll open it up by saying if you have any questions, please enter them in the chat box pertaining to the subject matter that we're going to be talking about today. I don't know whether we'll have time to get to those. I open it up because if we do have time at the end, or if we see something really interesting that we want to address, we absolutely so. I have Wayne Shanks here from USAA. He's fantastic. He's going to be introducing himself in a second. And we've got John Perez from Johnson & Johnson, who's awesome and here recovering from being sick right now. And Jessica Briseno, I think I'm mispronouncing, but you are also sick and recovering. So we have some great folks here that are here recovering with us to talk about their programs and help you all learn how to better interact with companies such as ours. So I'll just start really quickly. I've been in global procurement and in procurement functions for many, many years, on supply chain indirect supply chain functions for many years, serving as chief of staff, business operations manager, and absolutely love managing HPE's supplier diversity program. We have a long legacy of inclusion from the HP days, and Hewlett Packard Enterprise as a separate entity now has kind of taken on that legacy and stewardship with a focus, of course, on women, minority, veteran-owned businesses, so on and so forth. And yeah, super excited to be here. My personal background with small businesses is my mom and dad owned a small business in the Bay Area and actually were suppliers to Hewlett Packard back when I was a child. So it's pretty cool, as my dad was a small business owner his whole life, to see that I'm working with one of the companies that he printed for. We owned a printing company, so it was really cool. Anyway, so that's my personal story and my passion for small businesses and inclusion and diversity, the social justice being a graduate program work as well. But I'd like to hand it off to our panelists to talk a bit about what their roles are in the company, in their companies, and what excites them about the industry that they're in. So, Wayne, I'll start it off with you.
Okay, great. Hey, thanks, Julia. And so I'm Wayne Shanks. I lead our supplier diversity program at USAA. I'm also an Army veteran and want to take just a quick note to say happy birthday to all our Navy fans that are out there yesterday. Slightly belated, but always good to have all the forces there. USAA has been an advocate for veterans and military spouse businesses in hiring for many years, and because that's who really makes up our membership. It's a core of who we are, and it just makes sense for us to be in this space. The supplier diversity function sits in procurement, but we stretch across the entire enterprise from banking, the property and casualty, and all those other types of things that interconnect a large corporation such as us. So we have nearly 13 million members across the United States and in places elsewhere, and we're just so happy to be here today.
Thanks, Wayne. John, would you go ahead?
Thank you so much. Hey, great to be here. Thank you for the great introduction, Julia. When you said an esteemed panel, I think we're referring to Wayne. Wayne, for the folks that are on here, I've been able to hear Wayne on different panels and always learn something new. So I think Julia was referring to you, Wayne, as our esteemed panelist. Okay, and I have to say that, of course, as another fellow Army veteran. So hey, everybody, John Perez. I am head for Military and Veterans Affairs at Johnson & Johnson. We are the world's largest and most broadly based healthcare company. We procure about $30 billion a year of goods and services, a little more than that, and have a very large supplier diversity program, of which our veteran-owned business, service-disabled veteran-owned business, and increasingly military spouse-owned business is an important part of our supplier diversity program. Personally, as I mentioned, I was an Army veteran, joined J&J after making my transition from active duty. About the first 5 years of my career I spent within procurement, supply chain roles, moved into some acquisition divestiture work sort of outside the supply chain community, and then more recently took this role as head for military and veterans affairs, where I still stay pretty closely connected to our supplier diversity work, in particular the work with veteran-owned businesses and spouse-owned businesses. Looking forward to the discussion.
Great. Jessica, last but not least, Jessica from AT&T.
Hi, so Jessica Briseno. I'm in San Antonio, Texas, work with AT&T, as Julia mentioned, and I've been with the company for about 25 years, and maybe the last 20 all in supplier diversity. I come from a family of entrepreneurs, yet it never really resonated with me what supplier diversity was until the first few years with AT&T, when I had the opportunity to select who I did business with for, at the time, it was installation services, buying materials that went inside our central offices. And I was accustomed to the very large corporations, not diversity companies. And when it came to installation and some of the smaller materials or minor materials, that was my first introduction to diverse companies, women-owned companies, minority, veteran, that provided services that were competitive. They were very flexible and nimble. And I had a choice. I had a choice in who I was going to be doing business with. And from there, I really embraced it. And I jumped over into procurement and supply chain. And I've been there for the last 20 or so years. So a lot of experience working with veteran-owned suppliers. Service disabled veteran, I think, is where we first started, and just recently opened it up to veteran as well. So we're evolving, and I'm really looking forward to today's panel as well.
Thank you, Jessica, and thank you all for just sharing your stories too. And Wayne and John, thank you for your service as well. It's pretty awesome. A great segue into our first question, which is, I'm going to start it off with Wayne responding to this question, but all of you are certainly welcome to add your feedback on this. But Wayne, what's the value of certifications for veteran-owned businesses in general, regarding just veteran-owned certification process?
Sure. Well, first thing is, for large corporations like ours that, we're trying to find veteran businesses, a certification allows us to see that you're visible in the network when we go do searches for different products and services. But there are a variety of different certifications, verifications, identifications out there. And so it really pays close attention to who you are trying to market to and what certifications or identifications do they value. And that really should kind of lead you into, one direction or another. The first one was the VA's CVE program, and now it's a verification, not a certification, really designed for governmental contracting. But that was the first place that the veterans could really get in and get noticed and get, identified from other corporations. Now we have, and I know it's going to be acronym soup, and I apologize for that, but NVOBA, National Veteran-Owned Business Association, and NVBDC, National Veterans Business Development Council, who are both doing veteran business certification programs out there. Also, you have Disability In, that is doing certification for disabled veteran businesses and service disabled veteran businesses as well. And all these organizations also work as an advocate for it. And as John mentioned, we're so excited to see the military spouse being recognized, in this aspect of it. And the U.S. Military Spouse Chamber of Commerce is coming on it came out this year, and are doing great things for our military spouse community. But there's a number of other organizations that out there that can help advocate for your business and get you recognized by the corporations that are out there that are looking for your goods and services.
I'll just quickly offer one additional thought. There's some great resources out there to help ground a business in, hey, should I go pursue it? Should I not? If so, which ones? I'll put in the chat one of the great resources the Institute for Veterans and Military Families put together that was really trying to take a look nationally at all of the different veteran certifications that exist, sort of explain a little bit of what are the pros and cons between them, what it takes to go and get it. So it's certainly an important investment of time and resources from a business. So you really need to spend a little bit of time to think about, hey, is this a value to my business? And then if so, which one specifically?
Fabulous. Thank you, John. Okay, if there's no other comments, I'm going to move to the next question. And this is for all of you, and I'll start with Jessica on this one. What's the process on how to do business? How do we do business with AT&T, USAA, Johnson?
Sure. So I know that although I can't see the attendees, your eyes are going to roll because, as usual, you start out with you must register your profile in a portal. And I know for many suppliers, they feel like, well, we do that and it's a black hole and it doesn't go anywhere. There's no way around it for us. It is the front door process, if you will. So you must register at our attsuppliers.com portal. I'll put that in the chat once I'm through speaking. You register there and you must complete the profile in its entirety. Otherwise, it may not be processed efficiently and get you where you need to be. Once you've completed that profile, then it's actually received, and you will receive an acknowledgement email from us saying, we have your profile and we're going to start the review process. We start the review process and try to identify your core capabilities. What commodity areas do you support? Once we have that identified, then it is sent to the appropriate supplier diversity manager who works in that specific commodity area, and they'll look and see if there's opportunities and if you meet the criteria for whatever opportunities are happening. A lot of times the criteria will look at things such as, have you been in business for a minimum of 3 years? Do you have revenues that exceed $3 million, for example? It's not the same for every commodity area, but there are certain metrics that we're looking at. So once the diversity manager has time to assess your capabilities and what the opportunities are, then the next steps will vary. You may receive a notice that says there are no opportunities at this time because our contracts tend to be 3 to 5 years at a time, or you'll receive something that says you don't meet the criteria, or you might be invited to a call so that we can further vet and assess if there's opportunities with AT&T and what that looks like. And sometimes that call may be to just, instead of sending you an email saying there isn't anything, just walk you through, this is how we do business. And it may not be on a local level. Maybe the area that you're interested in is only on a national capacity. And so we'll talk about some of the gaps and what it would take in regards to doing business with AT&T. And it may not be direct with us. It could be that we're going to introduce you to our primes, our direct suppliers, to see if there's tier 2 subcontracting opportunities. So that's a little bit about how it works on how to do business with AT&T and what our front door process looks like.
Thank you, Jessica. Wayne, like to go next?
Sure. I was like, okay, going to flip a coin between John or I. It's like very similar to what Jessica had just mentioned. Yes, we have a a portal and intake, but really that's just the first step. Really, and I'll post a email also in the chat as well, and that's really the way to reach out to my colleague and I. So I was an army of one for many years. Now we're a team of 2, so it's just 2 of us working across all of the lines of business. So be patient with us. But, within the financial services industry, our regulatory environment is quite complex because of the banking and the insurance and all the other types of things, the data that goes across in there. So be prepared for a due diligence process that really gets down into a lot of the particulars, especially if you're going to do anything with data. But when you reach out to us, similar to what Jessica had mentioned, it's like we want to look at, your information security architecture, your financial stability. How long have you been in business? Are you capable of providing the goods or services that we're looking for? And then also, what's your ability to, grow with us as demands, increase and across the sector? So I think. Doing business with any large corporation, you need to be prepared to, I guess, withstand, some of the bureaucracy that we have, but, know that we are on your side and we're trying to find those niches and areas that we can in there. But, sometimes it may just be there's not an opportunity at this time, but keep the lines of the communication open and let's see if we can find a fit somewhere down the road. So it's relationship building and, coming to us with how you can provide value to our members, because that's what we're really trying to solve for.
Oh, fabulous. Thanks for the information, Wayne.
So I'll jump in and build off of that. So, I think what Jessica and Wayne both shared was clearly you need to register in a portal. Okay, that's going to have to happen at some point in the process, whether it's first or later on. But clearly you're going to have to register because we're going to need to exchange money at some point. So you're going to have to provide us your bank account information if nothing else, right? Clearly that's going to happen. So it is interesting. We kind of laugh about it on the supplier diversity and the procurement side of how frustrating that can be, but clearly it's going to happen. The second thing that I heard was around leveraging the supplier diversity professionals to help make the connection in. I would agree with that, so I'm not going to belabor that point. That is one avenue in, but I do want to spend a couple minutes and speak to what I think is probably even the bigger pathway in a lot of companies. It certainly is at Johnson & Johnson, and it's engaging with the category managers and commodity managers directly. So if you think of a large company, they'll have tens of billions of dollars of goods and services that they're going to procure. They're going to have hundreds or maybe thousands of individuals in procurement, and they'll often divide up those individuals into different large category families, then to categories, to subcategories, to commodities, right? Getting to know those specific leaders and members of the procurement community in those category or commodity teams is critical. Like they're the ones that are saying, okay, this is the marketplace of all the companies that exist that are performing this service or procuring or providing this good. They're not just looking at the portal, right? Hey, who's registered? They're going to look at all the companies that exist in the marketplace that can do it. And then, what are they trying to do? They're trying to find a company that's doing cheapest, fastest, best, right? So you need to get in front of those individuals to really be able to explain the capabilities you have as a company. The question often comes to me when I've shared this in other forums, like, great, okay, that kind of makes sense to me, that go talk to the category manager who's responsible for that. How do I find them? I think, listen, good old-fashioned LinkedIn search. When I was I've had a few different categories. I always put in my LinkedIn profile what category I was responsible for, and I will tell you, there was not a day that went by when I was the pharmacovigilance and medical safety category manager at J&J where I did not get outreach from a company that provided services in that space. Not one single day where I did not get outreach, and that includes like major holidays. Not a single day that I didn't get outreach from it. So I know you can find it that way. Another great avenue is, listen, there are industry events, right? You're at a veteran-specific event here. But when you think of those different categories of services, they're all different ones. If you're an injection molded plastic provider, there is a conference for you. And if you're doing that as a veteran-owned business, you should be going to that conference as well, because that's the one the category manager is going to go to. They're not going to go to all of the different diverse supplier ones, because for them it would be a needle in a haystack. So long explanation to finding those category teams is really critical, and getting yourself in front of those individuals to explain their capability is a key pathway.
Cool. Thank you very much, John. I think the resounding thing is first register for companies, and then there's many different paths, right, on how you can get engaged afterwards. So this leads me to a really important differentiation that I think, John, actually, I'm going to give you the first pass at this. Could you explain the difference between commercial and federal industries regarding to how these companies, how veteran-owned companies are getting engaged?
Yeah, totally. So one, let's just start with acknowledging private sector substantially larger than the public sector, right? Public sector, if my notes from the Bureau of Economic Analysis is correct right now, less than 10% would be public sector. And that's not just federal, it's federal, state, local, by state agencies, all that different stuff would be less than 10% of GDP. So what does that mean? Private sector is going to dwarf opportunities in the public sector. The second thing to note before I talk a little bit more about process to directly answer the question would be, listen, the goals are different. Recognize that the goals between public sector procurement and private sector are different. The public sector is not purely looking at cheapest, fastest, best. They're looking at other things, right? There may be social goals that the government is going to try to advance. There may be national defense goals that the government may be trying to advance in a way that it just wouldn't quite translate in the private sector, right? Private sector, what are they looking for? Cheapest, fastest, best. Sometimes you'll see AQS CIR, right? Assurance of supply, quality, service, cost, innovation, regulatory or compliance related things, right? It's sometimes an acronym that your procurement folks use when they're evaluating companies. Looking for the best company that could do it for the best value. That's not always the case with the government. So what does that mean? That translates into very different processes, right? So the private sector is not going to be as rigid and formulaic in how they're going to go through and do to create a quote, fair bidding process following a very regimented, publicly debated way to go and procure goods, right? The government has laws that say how they're going to go and procure it. There are then regulations that people get to comment on and weigh in. There's courts that then adjudicate those different things. That is not the case really in the private sector, right? We do have processes, but it's not quite as public and open because we have, again, different goals on how we're going to purchase things. So less formulaic in the processes, greater variation, right? There's great variation selling to the US government and maybe one agency within the government compared to selling to the state of New York, compared to selling to the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey. There's still variation there, but there's even more variation in selling to a category manager at USAA versus AT&T versus Johnson & Johnson. Right? There's pretty great variation in those processes. And then maybe my last thought is to go back to those certifications, right? How we value those will also look different, right? At the end of the day, it may be really important for one company or one category within a company, perhaps less so in other ones. So how you weigh in your value proposition and how you articulate the benefit that you're going to provide in the private sector is just going to look different than it would as you're doing the same thing to the federal government.
Thank you, John. Anyone else to add?
Just one thing. I mean, John covered multiple different bases there, and all of it was spot on. Just that I know that, USAA, we are, our members are the military. We're not a government contractor. We're not a government entity, and we don't have set aside. Say, for instance, the VA has, a program where if you're a service disabled veteran owned business, you can get a sole source contract with them. Not necessarily for us, so we're going to look at you. We're going to, and it's just as John said, the best value, the quickest, fastest, better. How can you generate value for our members, and how can we bring you to those decision makers in order to get a product or service into our supply chains.
And I would just add a few more things. So on the private versus public, touching on certifications, it's and I think I found with a lot of veteran-owned companies, it's that certification, right? And that we do not, and not just the veteran, it's also the women and the minority. It's that we do not on the commercial side accept self-certification. And that's often new to a lot of suppliers, that we don't accept self-certification. It's typically a third-party agency that has to provide that. And just realizing that the guidelines and rules are totally different. Like Wayne said, there aren't set-asides. There are no sole source contracts on the commercial side. And so your drivers, like John mentioned, are completely and totally different. The goals for inclusion are different. So they don't, and if you're only accustomed doing work on the private or the federal side, it's a challenge. It's a challenge when you truly have to beat out your competition to get your foot in the door. So it's black and white in those two areas.
Super helpful. No, thank you, Jessica. I really appreciate it. It is an incredibly different landscape, right? And incredibly varied. It's a question we could spend a lot more time on if we wanted to, but we've only got, we only have a few more minutes left. So I'd like to go into another question because I know we've got a lot here on our list. And this one's a fun one. So I'll start off with Wayne. So what's the unique value add, from veteran-owned businesses and different than others? What are the added benefits that you see when you work with veteran-owned suppliers?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think you see some of the same attributes that the military values, segue into their businesses. They're mission focused. They're organized. They know how to plan, execute, and deliver on what they said they were going to deliver on. For us, especially those suppliers that are facing our members, whether maybe it's home repair or car repair, we see that as a value add because they are in direct relation with our members. And if the one veteran talking to another veteran, you immediately have rapport with that. For instance, in San Antonio, we get hail, and I had to have a roof replaced. And so, I'm interviewing contractors to come out and do that. And the one I ended up going with was, he came up to shake his hand, our hands, and I saw USMC tattooed on his forearm. I'm like, oh, you're a Marine, where did you serve? And from that point on, I did not have to question whether he was going to do what he said he was going to do. I just took that for a fact because I knew that the Marines gave him training and values that were valuable to me as, a consumer, but I know it's also value to us as a corporation and across the board. So, and I've seen a variety of very successful veteran businesses out there that have provided a range of different products and services to us. And I think those attributes to the same will kind of continue to reflect over and over again.
That's great, Wayne. John, Jessica?
I'm happy to jump on top of that. I will take it to, there's some great studies that have been done around this on the employment side, looking at the veteran population, especially the post 9/11 veteran population, but not exclusively to that. Very much so anybody after the draft era military, we switched to an all volunteer force. Great data and research on that show that veterans tend to over-index in a number of different skills that translate to success in employment, where you get to see a veteran compared to a non-veteran holding those things constant tends to outperform. They also tend to have higher retention compared to non-veterans on the employment side. So now when you take and those skills be things like resiliency, adaptability, emotional intelligence, higher interpersonal skills, and higher interpersonal intelligence, probably stemming from diversity of backgrounds within the military. So then when you think of veteran-owned businesses, how does that translate? Well, veteran-owned businesses tend to employ more veterans than do non-veteran-owned businesses. So they're taking a population that data suggests have higher proportions of certain skills that are in great demand, and then have a larger employee base with that, and then they tend to perform well as well, right? It carries over, and we see those businesses are performing better than non-veteran-owned businesses. So I think it's all of those different skills collectively in a great employee base certainly helps to make it a very attractive to us as suppliers.
Yeah, and I would just echo what Wayne and John mentioned. I've seen it time and time and again where when in the past, when we could meet in person and we were networking in person, when when I would take a veteran-owned supplier, to the table to meet the category managers, like John called out, or the clients internally, the minute there was a connection between the veteran and the other veteran, and the history that they have, it just goes in a totally different direction, right? They have this same sense of drive and dedication that they remember from their past. And I think we see that, and we used to literally see it when you'd walk into a room and you could tell when the supplier walked in and they were veterans. The discipline, the leadership, the team first, drivers that they have. So it's very unique and something that, opens the door more often than not. That's very unique to the veterans.
Yeah, and Julia, I wanted to throw one more thing in there. So John had posted in the chat the IVMF, so the Institutes for Veterans and Military Families, and they've done a great research on the status of the military entrepreneur. Really highly suggest that everybody go out and take a look at that. There's a wealth of information in there about some of the challenges that our veteran and spouse businesses are having, but also some of the strengths that they have.
No, that's fabulous. Thank you, Wayne, and thank you everyone for your feedback on that. I'm going to get to a question now that I think everyone on the line is probably very interested in, which is how do we win more deals? What advice do you have for us winning more deals with your company? And I'll go ahead and start with Jessica on this, switch it up a little bit.
Sure. So I think, winning more deals is all about how well you can demonstrate and show your value proposition, what differentiates you, and get us there as soon as possible. If you've done your research on what we do, what we're looking for at the time, and every day it's different. Every day it's different. You can turn on the TV and you can see, or your radio or your podcast, whatever it is, your means of social media, and you're going to hear what our companies are doing, what AT&T is driving them, and it changes. So if you're not pivoting and evolving with us and coming to the door with your value proposition of how you're going to provide a solution, show us the solution, close the gap, don't leave anything in between. Do your research. That's going to help you win more deals. Come in strong. Know who we are. Don't expect me or the client or the commodity manager to close and fill in the gaps and tell you where the opportunities are. It's all about you knowing my business better than I do. We put so much information out there. There's no reason why you shouldn't. And that value proposition has to just really drive in on what the solutions are. Another thing on winning more deals is, and I think I don't remember if it was Wayne or John that mentioned, you have to have scalability. We need to know that it's not just a one and done. If you want to win more deals, you must have scalability. And with large corporations, a lot of times it is only one deal that your company can support. So if you want to win more deals, you have to show your scalability. You have to have other customers. It cannot be just AT&T. If you exceed or will exceed more than 30% of your business with us, we can't grow you. We don't want an over dependency. So being scalable is really, really important.
I know John and I are looking at each other. Jessica, you just knocked that one out of the park. I really don't have anything else to follow up on that one. That's what she said.
Couldn't agree more. I mean, how many times, and I think we can give probably an example we've all gone through of understanding how we're procuring something is so important, and then recognize that and then adapt to it, right? So how many of us have felt or have dealt with a situation where we have a managed service provider, so often in the contingent labor space, We deal with a staffing agency who then comes directly to us and we say, well, you have to talk to our managed service provider. There's a reason we've structured it that way. And then we sort of get into a back and forth about why we shouldn't use a managed service provider and should contact directly. It's a fruitless conversation for all of us, right? And there's other areas of business where we may operate that way, right? It's like understanding how we procure something, and then to Jessica's point, you have to do the homework and then adapt into that. Being upset about the way we procure something, or what our current strategy is, totally ineffective way to win business now or in the future. It's really understanding, adapting, and then going and executing. So.
Fabulous. Well,
the other thing that I would mention is the financial stability as well. That we're definitely going to peel back the onion and look at your finances and what that looks like in your access to capital, your history, with your existing customers. All that's going to come into play. So there isn't anything you can hide behind once you're trying to do business with any of us. We're going to see it all. And there's subject matter experts for each of these areas who can assess your capacity to grow and scale and win and be successful. The last thing any of us want to do is give you more than you can handle. So it's really important that you have your use cases of perhaps something really similar that you're trying to solution for us. We don't necessarily want to be the first ones that you're going to try that, when most of our opportunities are at a national level and not local.
Super important. And that's a great segue to kind of the last segment here. I haven't received any chat questions from the audience, so I'm going to start with, or end with, a really important question, which is, are there any areas of opportunity right now for veteran-owned businesses to compete in your business, or what are the areas that have the best opportunity to compete if you're a veteran-owned business? And anything else you'd like to share in the next couple minutes? And John, I'll start it off with you.
So there are definitely many open areas. There's not one. I didn't come to the event with one specific commodity, but for the largest and most broadly based healthcare company in the world, there's every single day we're going out to bid on something, we're procuring some good or service. And frankly, we're also a leading healthcare innovator. So we're always looking for new ways to do things, even when we do have an existing strategy. Right? We're constantly adapting and changing. So even when we may not have a need right now, maybe we don't know we don't have that need, but you have an innovative solution in the healthcare area, and you're going to come and deliver that to us. Right? That comes every day as well. So if you think that you have the opportunity to provide something that's innovative to us, that's cheaper, faster, and better than your competitors, great. Then that is what we want. Please do the outreach on it. I think that's also probably the most important thing. It's going back to what Jessica shared before, doing that homework, understanding our needs, and then coming in and explaining why you're the best company in the world that can go and do that for us.
Thank you.
I'll jump on next. So, as John said, I don't have a specific commodity that we're looking at right now, or one that has a huge demand. There's a variety of different things across the board, but think about those solutions that could take what we do currently and make them better. And that's where you really find that need. John mentioned, innovation. It's so key to what we do in order for us to stay competitive with our peers that are in the marketplace. So finding those solutions that make, insurance processes go quicker, banking more, easier for the user that come in there. A lot of them are in digital solutions. So I think those are the big areas that we see, but also know that it's a high barred for entry, especially when you're touching those digital areas.
Fabulous, thanks. And anything else, Jessica, on that in the last few seconds?
No, I would say the same. I did come with, here's 3 open opportunities that you can bid on. Sure. One, because I'm specific to just certain categories or commodity areas. And really, it's more about, if you want to register, place your profile in there, and then it'll go to me and my peers, and we'll look at and see where opportunities are. it changes daily.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that brings us to the end of our panel. I hope everyone was able to take something valuable from that. It was great wisdom and leadership on the call here. I really appreciate the time and the feedback and the energy. And I hope you all have a great rest of your session and event and day. So thank you all.
Thank you, Julia.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Take
everybody.
care. Bye.